Do you know who built first printing machine and where? Hello and welcome to my channel Legacy and Lens. On my channel you will all about history, geography, religions, and inventions of time. You will also get information on different ethnicities, cultures, and languages. So, let's start our video. In 1436 Johannes Gutenberg, a German goldsmith, began designing a machine capable of producing pages of text at an incredible speed, a product that he hoped would offset losses from a failed attempt to sell metal mirrors. By 1440 Gutenberg had established the basics of his printing press, including the use of a mobile, reusable set of type, and within 10 years he had constructed a working prototype of the press. In 1454 Gutenberg put his press to commercial use, producing thousands of indulgences for the church. The following year he printed his famous 42-line Bible, the first book printed on a movable type press in the West. 1. Gutenberg's press was the combined effort of several discoveries and inventions. The printing press was built around the traditional screw press, a precursor to today's drill press, with an added matrix on which individually cast letters and symbols could be arranged to form the desired text. This movable type design allowed pages of text to be quickly assembled from a precast selection of letters and symbols rather than laboriously carved from a block of wood as in the block printing method. Gutenberg also created a unique oil-based ink which transferred from his metal type to the printing substrate much more effectively than the water-based inks that other printers of the era used. In order to print a page, Gutenberg would arrange the necessary letters on the matrix and coat them in his ink. The matrix was then mounted on the contact end of the modified screw press and lowered until it struck the paper underneath. The process, while labor-intensive, allowed Gutenberg to print pages at a much greater rate than printers using the block printing method or those doing manuscript work. 2. Johannes Gutenberg's movable type press marked the beginning of the printing revolution in the Western world, a colossal moment in the history of information and learning. With access to printing presses, scientists, philosophers, politicians, and religious officials could replicate their ideas quickly and make them available to large audiences. Beginning in the 1100 CE, as literacy rates rose among European nobility, the demand for the reproduction of manuscript texts for personal use increased dramatically. Monks had traditionally produced texts in small quantities for use within their own religious communities. As one of the few groups with the education to produce manuscripts on a commercial level, some orders began accepting contracts from private citizens. This proved to be a lucrative profession and formed part of the financial basis for many monasteries in Europe. 1. Manuscripts were notoriously tedious to create and a single text could, in some cases, take a year or more for a scribe to complete. By the 1400s, demand for manuscripts had far exceeded what could be produced within the monastic system. Seeing an opportunity for profit, entrepreneurs across Europe began opening scriptoria, workshops dedicated entirely to the reproduction of manuscripts. 2. Some scriptories even included craftsmen to produce decorative elements including illustrations and embellished initials or drop caps. These scriptorias served as the predecessors to the publishing houses that would populate Europe after the advent of Johann Gutenberg's printing press. Johannes Gutenberg developed his printing press in a society in which participation in organized religion was nearly unanimous. Given the influence the Church held in Western Europe during that time, it is unsurprising that the first printed book was the Bible and that arguably the most influential printed work of the time was Martin Luther's The 95 Theses. In fact, a great number of the earliest printed works were of a religious nature. The clergy quickly adopted the printing press, sometimes replacing their traditional scriptoria with a press. The ability to circulate theological materials among clergymen at a much greater rate was generally seen as desirable. Increasing literacy rates and prevalence of religious texts resulted in a growing subsection of the European public with direct access to religious materials. 1 Though the Roman Catholic Church maintained that only members of the clergy were qualified to interpret the Bible, this new degree of access to religious texts provided impetus for a growing reformist movement. With the advent of Luther's theses, the printing press became central to the Protestant cause and ideology. Point 2. Protestantism encouraged the direct questioning of papal authority, accused church officials of abuses of power, and emphasized personal interpretation of Scripture. The ability to distribute religious texts and radical theory to the reading public allowed for a fundamental shift in the relationship between parishioners and religious officials. The conflict between Protestants and Catholics was an open one, with both sides seeking the support of the public. The printing press became an important weapon in the Reformation. Both the Protestant and Catholic propagandists made use of the printing press as a means of influencing the public. Protestants used the printing press to proliferate revolutionary theological material at a popular level, while the Catholic Church produced large quantities of anti-Reformation texts. Ultimately, the Reformation resulted in a long series of conflicts, both ideological and violent, that continued until the mid-17th century. The printing press played a significant role in communicating the ideas that fueled this theological war and was responsible, in part, for the Reformation's effect on Western religion and politics. Point 3. It should be noted that Jewish and Islamic groups were traditionally less receptive to the printing press, and generally preferred to produce written religious texts until the 18th or 19th centuries. Most Eastern religion communities also rejected the movable type press, though more frequently because of the difficulty of casting hundreds or thousands of individual characters. As a result, the earliest printed religious texts are almost exclusively from Christian documents from Europe.